So we're going to start this morning, give a little bit of time as folks come to join us with a story that's been one that I've enjoyed with our kids, and I think is a good introduction to our class this morning. So this is called Scaredy Squirrel by Melanie Watt. Scaredy Squirrel never leaves his nut tree. He'd rather stay in his safe and familiar tree than risk venturing out into the unknown. The unknown can be a scary place for a squirrel. A few things Scaredy Squirrel is afraid of: green Martians, killer bees, tarantulas, poison ivy, germs, sharks. So he's perfectly happy to stay right here where he is. Advantages of never leaving the nut tree: great view, plenty of nuts, safe place, and none of all of those things he's scared of. The disadvantages of never leaving the nut tree: same old view, same old nuts, same old place. In Scaredy Squirrel's nut tree, every day is the same. Everything is predictable. All is under control. Scaredy Squirrel's daily routine: wake up, eat a nut, look at the view, eat a nut, look at the view, eat a nut, look at the view, go to sleep. But let's say, just for example, something did happen. You can rest assured that the squirrel is prepared. A few items in Scaredy Squirrel's emergency kit: hard hat, antibacterial soap, chamomile lotion, parachute, bug spray, masks and rubber gloves, net, Band-Aid, sardines. What to do in case of an emergency according to Scaredy Squirrel. So he's got his whole exit plan there. With his emergency kit in hand, Scaredy Squirrel watches. Day after day, he watches until one day, Thursday, 9:37 a.m. A killer bee appears. Scaredy Squirrel jumps in panic, knocking his emergency kit out of the tree. This was not part of the plan. Scaredy Squirrel jumps to catch his kits. He quickly regrets his idea. The parachute is in the kit, but something incredible happens. He starts to glide. Scaredy Squirrel is no ordinary squirrel. He is a flying squirrel. Scaredy Squirrel forgets all about the killer bee, not to mention the tarantulas, poison ivy, green Martians, germs, and sharks. And he lands in a bush. He plays dead. 30 minutes later, 1 hour later, 2 hours later. Finally, Scaredy Squirrel realizes that nothing horrible is happening in the unknown today, so he returns to his nut tree. All this excitement has inspired Scaredy Squirrel to make drastic changes to his life. Scaredy Squirrel's new, improved daily routine: wake up, eat a nut, look at the view, jump into the unknown, play dead, return home, eat a nut, look at the view, eat a nut, look at the view, go to sleep. P.S. As for the emergency kit, Scaredy Squirrel is in no hurry to pick it up quite yet. All right, so Scaredy Squirrel. Any of you guys relate to or resonate with the likes of Scaredy Squirrel? Now, I'm going to just clarify one thing here. If you come to the Zoom chat, that is in order to ask a question. And whenever I accept your question, you will be live on air with us here. So I've got a couple of folks who are in the waiting room: Richard Patton, Gramsey, and Lori Peterson. And I just wanted to confirm before I went to you that it's because you do have a question or a comment and you want to come and be live on the internet with folks. So just check that out. If I remove you from it, you will be removed from ever. We'll see. I'll go on for a little bit. If those folks are still waiting to get on Zoom, I will assume that they do have a question or a comment that they want to make here. So the question that's kind of going to be our focus for today is the question: how can we be here now when the here and the now is so fragile? How can we be here and now when everything in the here and now is so fragile? That's a question by Casey. What's his last name? Oh, that's a hard one to pronounce. Tigrit. So I think we probably all realize how easy it is to live in how the past can hold us hostage and how the future can hold us hostage. And we've kind of covered that a little bit in our last couple of lessons, but just a couple of illustrations. So for example, you take a family outing and you're going to go for a hike and you're going to go have a picnic and you're going to spend the day out along the way. And you get about 30 minutes down the road and somebody says, "Did you lock the door?" Now, for some of you, if you don't remember whether you did or you didn't lock the door, you just say, I don't remember. And you go on and it doesn't impact your day. It doesn't affect anything that you're doing. And you go on and you enjoy that trip. But there are others in our midst who, if they wonder whether the door is locked, they would say, it's going to ruin my entire day thinking about that question. I'm going to turn around, go check and make sure the door is locked. And then I'm going to come back and see what's happening. So that's an example of how we can kind of, our here and now can get locked in the past. We do have a question or a comment here. Lori Peterson is still in the waiting room. So I'm going to admit her here and we're going to A, see if this works, and B, see what we got going on here. So Lori, we're connecting you. Make sure that we get Lori in here. Lori, can you hear me? So I'm going to admit her here. And we're going to A, see if this works, and B, see what. Lori, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, do you have a question?
No, I just was getting in here just to see if it worked.
Okay, so Lori has confirmed for all of us live in the world on Facebook that this does in fact work. Now, I can't, this probably would have been a great question. How do I say goodbye to Lori? Mute all. Lori, do you see anything on your end? How to like?
I can mute myself.
Yeah, or is there a leave the meeting thing?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you try leaving the meeting and then you can come back in if you've got a question, because I don't know how to make my screen there. Okay, so great news. We have confirmed that you can get on via the Zoom link when you've got a question or if you've got a comment. We'll invite you in to make statements or comments or any of that sort of thing. So that is working. Thank you, Lori, for being a good guinea pig for us all. So we were just talking about how easy it is for our past to kind of lock us in, and you can't enjoy your day if you're wondering if that door is locked. But the same thing can happen too in terms of the future. If there's some sort of uncertainty in the future, sometimes it's really hard for us to live in this kind of present or current moment. And so imagine that you've got a kidney stone and the doctor says you've got another one coming, and I don't know whether it's going to be days or weeks or months. Well, the reality is for the next few days or weeks or months, every time you go to do something, especially something that might take you away from a hospital or from a doctor, you might not be willing to live in that present moment because you've got this awareness of something that's upcoming or something that's happening. And so I think that right now we're kind of in that phase of life where it's easy to either get locked in the past, where if we could just go back, or to get locked in the future. I'm just ready for all this to be done. But what we want to talk about in this our class this morning is how do we be present in the here and now, in the midst of all the uncertainty, and how do we even begin to look for what God might be up to and what God might be doing? Where are the blessings in our life? Where is just the real hopeful opportunities in the things that we're able to do in the here and now? So our class is going to focus on 5 aspects or elements, and I think the easiest thing to do is if I bring this over to my iPad, and we will look at these pieces here. So let me just switch over here if that will indeed work as it should. And there you should see now. So this is the question we're kind of focusing on. How can we be here and now when the here and now is so fragile? So we're going to be looking at how to be here and how to be attentive while we're here, and then how to also be sure that we're ready to obey and ready to surrender. Because when God brings us into new situations in the here and now, there's something that he's wanting to do with us. There's something that he's wanting to teach us, and there's a way that he's wanting to use us in the midst of all of that. So how to be here and how to be attentive. I think it's a good thing for us to remember that this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. in other words, we start each of our days with this awareness that God gave me yesterday, and I'm thankful for yesterday. And God may give me tomorrow, but he may not. But the day that I have to live in the joy and in the blessing and in the gift of the life of breath God's given me, that's this very day. And that doesn't mean we ignore the realities of the limitations of this day, but it does mean that we begin to allow ourselves, we begin each day with this expectation or this anticipation that there is something to rejoice in this day. There is something to be glad in, because it's a day God's given us. If God took the day away from us, we might feel like something were taken from us or robbed or cheated. But then each day that we live into, it is indeed that real gift or that real blessing or opportunity. So coming back to Casey with the hard to pronounce last name again, he said, we are called to follow Jesus in the contingency of the present moment. And in the process, we build resiliency by hoping in God's future care yet to come. And I like those two kind of words, that the contingency of the present moment. You have plan A, plan B, like life is constantly changing and adjusting and moving. And so we really are living in the kind of time where the present moment has all these contingencies. I don't know how many days when I've even gone into the office and I've said, here's what I'm going to work on today, and something comes up and I'm completely adjusting my plan. Who would have guessed, I don't even know how long it's been now, 3 weeks ago, that we'd be coming up with contingencies for what are Sundays together. But in the process of living with all these adjustments and the contingency of the present moment, how do we learn to live with resiliency, which is this sense that by faith, hope in God's work and hope in God's future, that there is something better, not just even into the future, but even something that's better and available for us now. So we want to learn to be attentive and to be ready. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19 says, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And that's Isaiah 43, 19. Now I'm going to skip ahead here for a minute so that you can make sure you get this text before I leave the screen. In a moment, we're going to be looking at Luke 1, 5 through 20. So if you want to start turning there, you can. Luke 1, 5 through 20. We'll look at an example of what this looks like. So this is a God who does new things, and he lets us know he's going to do a new thing. And yet when the new thing comes, we don't perceive it, we don't welcome it, we don't embrace it. So the God who does new things encounters us to be people who like to do old things in old ways. And that can really create a challenge for us when it comes to discipleship. It creates a challenge for us when it comes to following Jesus. And so I want to look at one example of somebody who I think that we should expect that they would be ready for any contingency. It seems like a person who's walking with God. If God brings some newness into their life, that they would just embrace it and go with it. And we'll see how that actually turns out. So again, this is in Luke 1, verses 5 through 20. We'll be looking at Zechariah. And so as you look at Luke 1, 5 through 20, using the comment feature on Facebook, go ahead and type ways where it seems like Zechariah was walking with God, that he has the kind of a religious background, that he would be attentive and ready to adjust at anything that God has in store for him. So again, use the comment features on Facebook. And what are the things you see that say, hey, if I was going to bet on somebody getting this new thing that God's up to, this is a person who I think would be prepared and would be ready to receive that newness, that new thing. Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 20 is the section we're looking at here. All right, Paula, righteousness before God. Yeah, you see this this description here. Let me get my bearings in front of me. 1, 5 through 20. This is verse 6, both of them were righteous before God. What other indicators do you have that if you were going to bet on someone who would be perceptive and attentive and listening to God's new thing, that Zechariah would certainly be one of those people that you would assume would be well prepared for it? Yeah, careful to obey God's commandments. We have this, and again in verse 6, who they were living blameless according to all the commandments and regulations of the Lord. So there, yeah, and again, Stacy is mentioning this walking blameless. Okay, so we have Mona mentioned that he's from a priestly division, and then these other, the observing that all things, the blameless. Dan, welcome, thank you. He was a person who was observing all the commandments. And so it's kind of like we're introduced to Zechariah in terms of his pedigree and of the possibility that if somebody was going to pick up on God's new thing, we would expect it to be somebody like Zechariah, because he is a priest. Interestingly enough, his name means God has remembered. Yeah, I mean, we all have names that mean things that we often miss, but I find that to be interesting. He is married to Elizabeth, who is a descendant of Aaron. So you have kind of this priestly kind of convergence between priestly line of husband and priestly line of wife. And it's not just they have this inherited priestly line, but they have been dedicated themselves to God. They were righteous, living blamelessly, following the commandments. Now, I want us to look a little bit further down in verse 9 and following. And there were certain events or activities of this day that it seems to indicate that, oh man, Zechariah should have his ears extra attentive. Like, what were some of the things on this specific day when he went into the temple that you would think would have Zechariah just really engaged and where, man, God's up to something? Do you see any things there in verses 9 and following? In fact, it could be even starting in verse 8 in some ways. Go ahead and use the comment feature if you see anything about this. You have all this heritage, and then you also have some unique things happening in Zechariah's life on this specific day. Yeah, so Dan mentions he was chosen to enter the temple. Now, if you're a lottery person, now we might not get all of the background here, but you would have 2 weeks out of the year, Zechariah would serve in the temple. He would do a 1 week stint, and then he would do another 1 week stint. According to Josephus, a priest would do what Zechariah is doing here only once in their lifetime, just simply because the number of priests, the limited amount of times that they go, and then the likelihood that the lot falls on you. So this is a day that the lot falls on him. Like, this is the day in some ways that Zechariah has won the lottery. It will be his only opportunity in the temple to go in and to offer this particular sacrifice. And so Zechariah's got to be thinking, wow, this is a very unique opportunity, a very unique day. And so he goes in, and then while he's in there, what is everybody outside doing? That's in verse 10. As he was doing it, the people were praying outside. God's up to something. God's doing something. Zechariah goes in. Everybody is outside praying. And when he arrives, he encounters the angel of the Lord. Now, to Zechariah's credit, does he have any idea that this is like a normal thing or an abnormal thing? I mean, this is his one time to go behind the curtain. And as he enters in, the angel of the Lord appears to him. And does Zechariah seem ready to deal with all God's new adjustments? Does he seem to believe, yep, this is the powerful God that I've been worshiping my whole life, who's now doing something powerful, and hey, I'm on board, here we go, let's do this? It doesn't seem to be the case. In verse 13, we find out that the angel says, do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. So, first thing we have to decide is, what was Zechariah praying for? Some people say that what he was praying for was a kid, and now God's answering that prayer. I'm not sure personally that that's what he's praying, because in verse 18, Zechariah said, how will I know that this is so? For I am an old man and my wife is getting on in years. Let me ask you a question. Are there any of you who are old enough, and you don't have to answer this on Facebook, this is more rhetorical, that are old enough that even if you decided you wanted another kid, you wouldn't even bother praying about it. So just ask yourself that question. I mean, I'm past normal childbearing years. Is that something I'm going to pray about? No. So what I think Zechariah is praying about, in fact, I think we get an answer to that in verses 68 and 69. He says, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has looked favorably on his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a mighty Savior for us in the house of his servant David." So I think that's what Zechariah has been praying for, is a Savior, is a deliverer to come. So whatever God is doing is something that Zechariah has been praying about. He's been anticipating, and he has kind of the pedigree and the heritage and the personal kind of spiritual disciplines, the relationship with God, that he seems like as soon as God says something new's coming up and he's okay, I'm on board. I mean, you've done it in the past. I've been praying about this. Here I am on board. But as some of you have already mentioned in the comments, his response was less than stellar, I guess maybe we could say. Certainly is understandable. He says in verse 18, "How will I know that this is so? I'm an old man. My wife is getting on in years." So once again, we have Zechariah expressing doubt and reservation to really lean into this future kind of plan that God has in store for him and his family, doubting what it will look like, doubting that it will be possible. And I do wonder if we were to look in the mirror, would we see or encounter that in any way? Like, would we look and say, I'm just not sure that God's going to bring any sort of kind of future goodness or future reward or future blessing out of this? Or would we be in the kind of mode or posture where we'd say, okay, God, yep, I had a plan A, but you have plan B, and your plan B is always better than my plan A. So here we go. Let's do this. I'm excited to see what you have in store. And as you think about Zechariah's possible response, think about your own response. What would you do if God said, okay, we got this coronavirus thing, and watch, I'm going to be doing something new. I'm going to bring something out of it. And you say, no, I don't really want to participate in that because it's something new. I'm not sure where it's going to go. I'm confused and I'm uncertain. So now I want us to go a little bit further down in Luke, and we will look at an example of obedience and surrender. So of course, in Luke, we find out that Mary, Luke 1, Mary finds out that she is, this is in verse 26 and following, that Gabriel comes to her, and the virgin's name was Mary. This is verse 28. "And he came to her and said, 'Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you.' But she was much perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, 'Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus.'" Let's talk for a minute. You can use the comment feature about how dramatically or drastically Mary's life would have changed with this news. So what do you think is different going forward? What could be disconcerting to Mary? What could be concerning to Mary when she receives this news? So use the comment feature and let me know, what do you think could be concerning or worrisome or disconcerting for Mary when she gets this news? And I'm just going to try and line this up where I can see what people are saying and also not block that. Maybe I'll do this. So yeah, what things on the comment feature do you think, in what ways Mary's life would be turned upside down? Okay, so Paul is saying it's completely changed. It's culturally unacceptable. So there are implications for her relationship with Joseph. There are implications with her relationship with siblings, the implications for her relationship with her parents. So being pregnant and not married. So that has its cultural stigma with it. So there's a concern about, will Joseph even still stay with her and marry her? I mean, you think about being in this engaged kind of twilight, oh, this is going to be wonderful. And then now you find out you're pregnant. What happens with that relationship? Dan, this, I'm not married. What will Joseph think? So there's like basically, if you took here's Mary's normal life, and then you add this pregnancy, at most maybe 5% of it right now could stay the same, and everything else, I mean, you go to the grocery store in a little town and everybody knows. So if I'm Mary, not sure the likelihood that God would tell me I'm pregnant, but he's done some pretty amazing things. Okay, but so if I'm Mary and I get this news, I'm not going to get on board. God's doing a new thing, and I just want to hold on to the old thing. Even if God says, hey, something better is going to come out of this, I'd look around and say, nothing better can come out of this. My life is ruined. Everything that I'm kind of building my foundation on, that's just kind of decimated. So no, I don't want to do this. But what's Mary's response? It's in Luke chapter 1, verse 38. She says, here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be done with me according to your word. Then the angel departed from her. Do you see kind of the surrender, the openness, the obedience of Mary? How many of you would be willing to pray that prayer right now? Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Lord, let it be with me according to your word. Do you find yourself pushing against or fighting against or rebelling against where we are right now? Or do you find yourself waking up and offering yourself with surrender and say, God, whatever ways you want to use me to do a new thing, let it be done to me according to your word? Or are more of your prayers of resistance and maybe even manipulation? God, get this back to where it needs to be. This is uncomfortable. It's uncertain. I'm unaware of things. So God, just get me back on the track I want to be on. Or willing to begin to pray a prayer like Mary to say, let it be done with me according to your word. That ultimately we offer ourselves to be used by God in whatever ways that he wishes. So using the Facebook feature, what things hold us back from fully surrendering? Why would we be hesitant to pray Mary's prayer, or to embrace even this situation with the kind of, hey, you use me as you wish? So using the comment features, what are some of the ways that you think that might be like, here's something that could hold people back, or maybe this is something that would be holding me back from fully surrendering to God right now? Pat says that we should all be willing and ready to serve, that there are new possibilities and service opportunities. And so if we have that openness of Mary, that God can use us according to his word in ways of serving. Here's just a random thought. I just re-looked at Dan Moss's comment saying, I'm not married. What will Joseph think? And I'm thinking, what? Dan, you're not married? Okay. No, we see it here. I'm just getting a lost here. Okay. Paul, what would we experience? Fear. Jerry, we would also experience fear. Mona, we would experience fear. We don't like the unknown. We want to be in, Leah's saying we want to be in control. Oh, she's attributing that to Dustin. This comment comes from Dustin Williams, ladies and gentlemen. We want to be in control. Yeah, there's a lack of trust. If I really trust God, where is he going to take me? What's he going to do? Yeah, sometimes we don't believe that we can make a difference. We say, well, if God needs to use my hands or my feet, boy, that person over there has better hands and that person has better feet. In fact, I will say I had a text, and Gay, I do apologize, according to our news thing, how that picture of Gay came across was she said, Craig, thanks for being the face of the Billings Church of Christ. And I thought, well, that's a scary face. God should choose a better face to be the face. And then Gay said it could be worse, and she sent me the picture that was in our newscast. So if you haven't seen our newscast on Facebook, make sure you check that out. But yeah, thinking, I mean, I shouldn't be the face, or I shouldn't be the hands, or I shouldn't be the feet. Sometimes we're worried about what other people will think. We surrender to God. We let him have his word and his way with us, and outsiders might look at us the way that people looked at or perceived Mary. So I think that there is something in us that kind of holds us back from just fully surrendering right now to God. But I think that we see this example that the kinds of people God uses, they often do go through this kind of like push back phase where, no, I don't want to be used, or I don't want to change. But God always gets them to where they need to be. And so even if you're rebelling right now, just be confident in the fact that God will get you to where you need to be. But let's be willing participants in that process where we surrender ourselves to where God wants to take us. And that may be different than even where we want to go. Yeah, Aaron talking about how it would change my perspective. That sometimes we do need that readjustment of perspective in terms of what it means to surrender. Now, here's the good news. As Christians, our religion is, yes, it is a destination religion. It matters where we're heading and it matters where we're going. But Christianity is also a journey religion where not only does the destination matter, but the journey along the way is important and is meaningful and has significance for us. So we've asked this question in the Billings congregation. So this is kind of like a checkup, but we'll see who can be the first. So get ready on the keyboard for this question. And the question is, what was the most common title used to describe Christians before they were called Christians? So when you referred to Christians, before they were Christians, what were they called? Does anybody remember? Use your comment feature, and 2 thumbs up will go to the person who gets the first comment submission correct. What was the most common title that Christians were called by before they were called Christians? The Way, Brian. Oh boy, Brian got in there just before Jerry, at least on my screen. You guys probably saw this 20 minutes ago and you're wondering why I'm not doing it. But so here's 2 thumbs up for Brian Lair as they referred to this group of peoples. And so we do have the language. Yes, Gay and Richard, you guys are correct. Believers, disciples being some of the language. In terms of after the resurrection, in terms of the way that they referred to them, they called them the Way. So you have that mentioned in Acts 9:2. And he asked them for letters to the synagogue at Damascus, so that if he, that being Saul, found any who belonged to the Way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. So you wonder, why would the name The Way be what Christians were called? And that's simply because so much of the Gospels and so much of following Jesus is on the way. The way is, the Greek word is just pathway or road. And so much of discipleship happened on the road. They were saying, if I'm going to be a follower of Jesus, I need to be ready to get on the road. I need to be ready to be led where he wants to lead me, to go where he wants me to go. And so there's some examples in Mark's gospel where discipleship happens on the way. Mark 8:27 says, on the way, he asked his disciples. 9:33, he asked them, what were you arguing about on the way? 10:17, as he was setting out on a journey, that's the word, the way, as he was setting out on the way, a man ran up to him and knelt before him. 10:52, immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. So Christianity is a journey religion. Yes, the destination is important and it matters, but also the journey matters. Today, am I following Jesus on the pathway? Am I going to where he wants me to go? Somehow we have taken our journey religion and made it an abode religion. Like we set up our house and our lifestyle and our schedules and our patterns, and we say, I will follow Jesus according to my lifestyle, my schedule, my patterns. But the examples of discipleship that we have is to say, God's going to take us on new journeys. Now, this journey he's taking us on right now isn't requiring or asking us to leave homes, but it is a journey on the way, because we have to adjust to and accommodate to and get used to completely new contexts and situations. And that really is what every relationship is about, is being willing to address or encounter something new and say, I'm going to go on this journey because I know that God's going to bring some sort of good out of it, even when that journey seems perilous, because sometimes it does. In Psalms, it says, even though I walk through, whether it be the darkest valley or the valley of the shadow of death or the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's a way of saying is that sometimes when we do follow Jesus on the way, we will find ourselves in really, really dark paths. And maybe for you, this is one of those dark paths. But the examples that we see in Scripture is that we continue to follow along, even when we're uncertain of where the journey is taking us. Yeah, and Pat says it was also because of the different path that they started walking. That's the the reality of the gospel is that we don't create our own pathways. I'm going to go this way and you go that way. It's following Jesus along the way. I found this quote, and let me switch over here so that you can see it. Just confirm that it's there in front. Should be there in front of you now. If you want to make it back home, you have to keep moving forward, consenting again and again to being transformed by the renewing of your mind, to learning, revisiting, and resisting once more the bad habit of mistaking your sense of reality for reality itself. What I like about this quote is this notion of consenting again and again to being transformed by the renewing of your mind. The Christian life is one in which we wake up every day and we consent to God's will being done in us and through us and with us. That we consent once again to say, I don't know what you have planned for today. I don't know what you have in store for today, but I'm going to walk along the pathway. I'm going to surrender. And in discipleship, we look at the activities of this day, and we don't have to know the destination of today. We know ultimately the destination we're heading, but today, what is it going to look like? What is it going to involve? What is it going to entail? God doesn't often give us answers to all those questions. Jesus says, follow me. So I think about the disciples and their journey of discipleship. If you were a disciple, what questions, go ahead and use your Facebook feature here. What questions would you wanted to have asked of Jesus before you made your decision to follow him? Because remember, they're just out there fishing away and Jesus says, come follow me. What questions do you think you might be tempted to ask before you decided if you were going to take this journey with Jesus? So use the comment features and let us know what are some of those questions that you think might be good, valid, legitimate questions at a time like that. Yeah, can my family come along? Yeah, is this something where women and children are invited also? Yeah, Paul is saying, where are we going? Brian, how long will I follow you? How can we be sure this is the right choice? Yeah, is there some sign of proof? Oh, this is coming fast. What's in it for me? What are we going to be doing and how will we know to do it? How long? How long will this journey take? So I think immediately there's questions that come to the surface. And Jesus in those contexts, he just gives one command: follow me. So what happens to all those questions? I think all those questions get answered in the process of following him. There are some things that we only discover the answer by doing it. I think I shared once a Mark Twain quote. There's some quote, not coach. Mark Twain once said, there's something you can learn by carrying a tail by the cat that you cannot learn in any other way. And I think that there's something we can learn about discipleship that we can't learn by any other way than just simply following Jesus along the way. So my encouragement to us today is to be a people who say, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. How and where and when God chooses to use me, I will consent again and again. And I know at the end of it, I'm going to be a different person, but the person I'm going to be is a better person. And hopefully the people that I interact with and the people that I touch, they also will be different people. I've mentioned this, I think it was in a podcast that has been a part of my daily prayer for the last several years, is including this line: Lord, fill us with anticipation for the good you have in store for us in this day. So my prayer is that we wake up to every day with anticipation. Lord, just help us to see the good you have in store for us, because even in these dark valley-like times, I think we can anticipate God to bring some good blessings out of it. If there's any last questions or comments, we'll go ahead and use this. We did figure out this call-in feature. Maybe we'll use that again sometime, but at least it's nice to have it as an option. Unless you want to call in now with a question, we can extend that a little bit if you want to do that. Just a public service announcements before, if there's any other questions, I'll check the comments. But we have uploaded our service for this morning. Want to do a huge shout out to Rod Cullingworth, who was burning the midnight candle, making sure that it got done and released. So thank you to Rod for all of his work in getting the video available for us. If you go to the church website, billingschurch.org, you'll see on the front page, there's a click here for status updates. If you click there, you'll see links to how you can access it on Facebook and how you can access it on our church's live stream. Both of them are available there. So as long as there's not any other questions, I think the next time we'll be doing this will be Wednesday night. I am thinking about a little bit different of a passage. Okay, what's the name of the podcast you quoted? Dina is asking. It's let's see if I can get you the link for that. It's on Buzzsprout. Let me see. I will pull it up here, log in, and get the link. Actually, you know what, Dina, if you go to the Billings Church website and you click on the status update page, there'll be on the home page, there's like click here. If you click on that and you read down somewhere along the way, we do have a link to the church podcast. And I did a 5-part series on using COVID as an acronym, things for us to be ready for and prepared for as Christians. And so if you find that 5-part COVID series, you'll find that's what I was referencing there in that comment. So thank you for that question. Got some thank yous here. I don't know how to load more comments. So in light of that, I think that we'll finish up. Oh, one final last kind of note is we're going to start, Lord willing, we're going to try twice a week to do a news update. If you haven't yet seen that, you go to the church's Facebook page, where it's just going to be fun. It's going to be playful. It's going to be light. What I'm really hoping is that you guys, the church, will participate in sharing events or experiences or things that they're up to. And so send us pictures and emails and videos of things, and we'll work to incorporate those so that we can just continue to feel connected. We're calling that the Billings Chipper Connection. And I know it's a great title, but hopefully you guys appreciate it. And so we'll go ahead and finish up our live stream now. Thank you everyone for being a part of this, and pray God's blessing over you today. May he richly bless you and guide you in all things. God bless.